Welcome to our Masterclass or webinar here. I'm Fred Willerup. I'm CTO and co-founder of LeanLaw, and I'm joined by Chase, as always, head of customer success and probably a familiar face to most of you guys if you have asked questions or needed help in the past in the product. The theme today is going to be compensation and distribution, some big words. It's essentially getting paid by paying your attorneys based on what clients pay you, and the various features in LeanLaw related to reporting and workflows around that. That's our theme today. We'll be talking about the revenue by attorney report. We'll be talking about various allocation options and also a new feature called distributions that we'll go into depth with here. That's going to be about a little over half-hour session here. We also have a bunch of stuff to share that's new and what's next. Lots of stuff coming up and stuff we've recently released. So we're going to be spending probably the last 20 minutes or so on that part. So does that sound good, Chase? Is that what, did I miss anything? Or
sounds like a pretty solid hour.
Yeah. So I think we're going to start off on, I should say, we're recording this so you can replay it or send it to some colleagues that you think might benefit from this. Or if you're an accountant, you can have, send it to your law firm clients. Also, we really welcome questions during the session, and it makes it more interactive, less boring. And we're here to answer your questions. Just use the Q&A box in the webinar. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to sort of enable your voice or picture here. It's a webinar, not a Zoom meeting. So we're going to have to use the Q&A box for the interactive part. So yeah, just go ahead and ask questions there as we move through this. It's kind of a complicated topic. So, it would be, I would expect some questions here.
And actually, a week ago, one of our users actually emailed me directly with a question for this webinar. So if you have questions when you see the new topic, feel free to send messages in the chat or email to myself or Fred with those questions. That way we can kind of feature them and talk about them a little bit more in these webinars.
All right, let's get to it. Chase, I'm going to stop sharing here if you want to kick it off, see what we're...
Yep. Go ahead and share my screen. There we go. Should be able to see that now.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so like Fred said, we're going to be covering distribution and compensation today. Two pretty big topics and two things that kind of important to getting everyone in the firm paid. We've spent a month tracking time, fees, expenses. How do we pay our people? So to start off, we're going to be starting as basic as possible with a single invoice. So I've created an invoice here that you see for A1 fencing, and I've actually already paid this. What I want to do is go through and we'll kind of walk through the process of compensation and revenue reporting and how what we changes that report. So go ahead and take a look at this invoice just to start out. Okay, so we've got a fixed fee up here. We've got a couple of time entries for some different users, and then a couple of expenses here. And that's going to be important to keep in mind because different types of items on invoices are treated differently depending on how you have the firm set up. Okay, and this already has been paid. In order for something to show up in distribution, compensation, revenue reporting, going to have to be paid for already. So keep that in mind. All right. jump to reports. You'll notice we've got a new report UI here. Thank you, Fred and company. And we're going to go to the by user section for.
I don't think this has been fully enabled for everyone yet. So maybe you can show whenever you're showing how you find a report, also show the old menu, please.
Sure. Can do. So this is the new menu, like Fred was mentioning, but up top here, there's the open previous report navigation. So for everyone who isn't currently looking at that, we're going to be looking at the revenue by attorney report here over on the left. If we are in the new UI, the new menuing, it'll be underneath the by user section and revenue by attorney. So I'll go ahead and click revenue by attorney, look at this month. So that invoice was dated, I believe it was today actually. And we'll go set this as the responsible. So the way that Fred and I have set this up is all of the information we're looking at here is just a single invoice. That way we don't have multiple invoices and payments layered in. This $4,250 is just that one single invoice. So that makes it a lot easier to track. Okay. So looking at the revenue by attorney report here, we've got the 3 users who actually worked on that. So if we go back and we were to look at that, that invoice, we would see those were the users working on it. And LeanLaw is generating this report automatically. So let's go through what those columns actually mean to start. Now, these first 3 columns are billed. So for the purposes of this conversation, we aren't really concerned about it. Not super relevant to topic of compensation and distribution. We're interested in the share origination and adjusted share right now. So share is the collected minus the allocation for firm and organization. So how much of the total is going to that individual attorney or user? Origination, that's something that we'll come back to in a little bit. And then the adjusted share is the difference between the share and the origination. Fred, did we cover all the bases on this before we start?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll just sort of summarize this at a maybe slightly higher level. So what we're showing is the ability by LeanLaw to take whatever is collected. So all payments made on invoices, and here we're just looking at one, and then split that payment up into between the attorneys that worked on on that invoice, and maybe in these other buckets. You can kind of see this as, we have a payment, and we're kind of putting that payment into different buckets of the attorneys and some unallocated stuff and origination. So as we expand on this, you'll see how we're talking about the allocation of the payment going into different buckets. And the end result here is a really powerful tool, allowing you to take, all the payments coming in for the firm in a given time period, and then generate all these distributions and payments and allocations automatically for each attorney. So that's I kind of wanted to kind of reiterate the high level here. And so to kind of explain this and show this, we're just looking at one invoice now. It's a $4,370 invoice. And when we look at just that invoice in this report here, we can see that Frederick gets 2,000, Gary gets 1,500, Heather gets 750, and there's some unallocated expenses to make up the difference. So we've sort of split up the payment back into its components of who worked on it. So anyway, I just thought that might be helpful to kind of spin it around that way.
Awesome. Thank you, Fred. All right. So now we're actually going to open up this report a second time. So that's the same report. I'm going to quickly get that set up. There we go. So now what we're going to do is take a look at making some changes to how this report is generated. And these are the same settings that you can set up in your firm. So we've got the 2 reports here that are set up the exact same. And I'm gonna open up another one actually. And now we're gonna go to settings in LeanLaw. And then on the left, the reports option. So again, that was settings and reports. Okay, now we're interested in the revenue allocation settings here. Now, if you've been to a couple of these, you might remember it was a previous month where Fred and I worked through all of the settings here and discussed what they do. We did cover this, but now we're going to actually take a look at how they work in action, what they actually do. So starting off at the top, we've got the originating attorney share. Some of you might be familiar with that term originating. It's whomever brought the case to the firm. So if it's kind of like a finder's fee. We've got the firm share, which is the same thing, but the firm. That allows us to set the firm to always take a certain percentage of the payment. So say we had a $4,000 payment, the firm could get, let's say, 10%. Okay, so we're going to start with those two. I'm actually going to remove that, and we'll give a 10% default to the originating share. Okay. Now, how do we set origination? Real quick, we're going to jump into that same matter we were looking at earlier, that A-1 fencing. There we go. And again, a little bit of a sneak peek. Well, I guess not a sneak peek because this has been enabled for everyone. I'm going to jump to billing and rates, and you'll see here, Heather Mears is actually set as the originating. There's that originating column, and there's that checkbox. So Heather will now receive automatically 10% of that payment on top of whatever she worked on that invoice, that will automatically be allocated to her. So let's go take a look at that report again, and I'm going to quickly refresh, and we'll compare the two and see what that 10% difference did. Okay. So here's the one we were looking at previously, and now watch this origination column. We'll flip to that new one that uses that 10% origination, and there we go. Now, Heather has a $425 allocation. So that has affected the adjusted share column. So we'll flip back to the old one. There we go. So Frederick has 2,000, Gary has 15. And now that 425 has been taken out of their shares. So we can do the same thing with the firm at large. So if we go to our settings, reports, and let's say we do 10% for the firm. I'll go ahead and get rid of that origination for individual attorneys. We'll refresh that. Okay, so now here's the original one. And now that we've set 10% revenue for, or 10% share for the firm, we've now got an option down here at the bottom for firm share, and that 425 has been set to the firm. Now, I actually did receive a question on if each client needs to have this set up for them or if it's done automatically. The settings that we're changing here, these two, and actually ultimately any of these, will affect all matters across the board. You will need to set origination on a per matter basis. So who actually brought that to the firm. So that would need to be done manually, but everything else we change here automatically applies across the firm.
Chase, can you set the origination to 10 again?
Yep.
I just wanted to yeah, maybe 10 for each here. That's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I just wanted to be clear here on this page. So this is confusing sometimes to people. The collected column is how much that attorney worked on that. So how much was collected on behalf of that attorney. So 2,000 for Mr. Taylor there. The share is that amount minus origination and firm share. So in this case, it's a total of 20% we're subtracting for everyone. Mm-hmm. And then we end up with a share column. And now we add back, like Heather, she gets her 10% subtracted from her own work, but it gets added back with that second column there. But she gets the 10% added back from all the collected service revenue, which is 425. And then we end up with those summed up numbers at the end. And so in the end, the adjusted share is what I worked minus origination, and then plus what I, minus and plus origination. So this is this can be a little hard to decipher, but hopefully going through it, this detail can clarify it.
So actually, that's a perfect segue into the allocation detail. So if we drill in, as we can do in every LeanLaw report, we'll go ahead and take a look at Heather here. We'll click in and click in again to the specific client and go to the triple dots and take a look at that allocation detail. Like Fred was saying, sometimes it's a little complicated to see how we got what numbers. This payment allocation detail allows you to get a little more explanation onto, into why you're seeing the numbers that you're seeing. So like Fred said, we can look at the work, the original share, and then we can actually break out who took out what for origination or what for the share, as well as expenses here. Got a question from Michael. Does the origination apply to all clients and matters or matter by matter basis?
I think I understand this question. So if you go, if you have it actually applies to the matter, but quite often you might have multiple matters for a client, and the origination is really at the client level. So in that case, you can set Chase, if you want to show editing the billing and rates page for a matter, please. Just go in there. So when you change the origination in here, like let's say we change it to some different person in here. And then when you say, instead of saying save changes, which changes it for just this matter, you can say save for all matters for that client by clicking that little drop down. So it's kind of hidden, but this is the way to sort of set origination across all matters for a client sort of quickly instead of going into each one. All right.
Fred, I think that just about covers the entire, everything I wanted to talk about as far as the basics there.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much more here. Like I think things and we're going to cover that next. But we want to show this very basic building block first, because once we get into some of the options we have to affect this, it gets complicated quickly. So hopefully you can kind of appreciate that simple building block of taking a payment and then squirreling it out to the different people and to expenses and so on and so forth. Now, one thing we did not show here, which is critical, is dealing with partial payments. This is the full payment that Chase made here on this invoice. It's quite clear where all the different money should go. But if you have a partial payment, we have some algorithm basically that allocates things in a certain order. We will allocate taxes first, then expenses, then unallocated fixed fees. So fixed fees that don't have a name assigned. And then we will split out the rest, if there is any left, proportionally to all the attorneys working on the invoice. So be aware that with partial payments, there's an algorithm behind the scenes that basically, the short version is expenses will be paid off first and then fees. But there's a little more subtlety there.
And that's
so once you have a second payment coming in, then we will look at and we'll say, oh, the expenses were already paid with the first payment, so that's good. And then we'll allocate the full amount of the remaining payment to the services. And this, when you're looking at why the numbers are a certain way, this is where that allocation detail function Chase showed just a moment ago comes in and will clearly show, in the case of multiple payments and partial payments, why we're doing it a certain way. I am honestly shocked that there are no questions here, but but feel free to ask away.
Probably just mumbling like, I can't believe that Fred and Chase are trying to figure out how this works.
We'll get back to some of the ways that this can be configured. There's ways to sort of deal with, allocate revenue for certain users like paralegals to attorneys. There's way to deal with expenses certain ways. There's ways to deal with fixed fees or unallocated fixed fees other ways. So we'll get back to that, but we'd like to now shift over and talk about the distribution feature, I think. Or Chase, are we ready for that? Or
I'm ready. There was a question from Michael on how write-downs affect origination allocation.
So write-downs are basically left out of this. So if you do a write-down, you'll essentially collect less. And so a write-down will essentially result in a partial payment compared to the original invoice amount. And we will do the same algorithm I just mentioned, where we will pay expenses first and then services. So if you go back to this particular invoice, Chase, maybe show the invoice here. I can just give an example here. So here's the invoice. There should be some expense. There we go. Just can we see all the, roll it up a little bit so we see all the items? There we go. So we have, $2,000 fixed fees, some services, and some expenses. If you did a write down of this for say $500, that will all show up on the invoice. These numbers won't change. And then we'll ultimately get a payment of about, whatever the balance is right now, minus 500. And so we're going to allocate 120 to expenses, and the remainder will be proportionally split up between the fixed fees and the services shown above here. So, so hopefully that answers the question.
All right, Fred. Tell us more about distributions.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now. Here we're going to look at the exact same account here. So it should be. I'm just controlling it now here. One thing we found when people started using this, or users started using this a while ago, if I'm looking at a given month here, like let's say May. And I'm looking for the whole firm, and I'm looking at my originations and shares and all this, and I'm deciding what to pay out. Now there's a certain fragility here that if a payment comes in that I forgot and it's dated to May, it's going to affect these numbers here. Also, we had firms that wanted to issue payments or to deal with the compensation of this in a kind of not necessarily on a month boundary. So we've introduced this thing called distributions. It starts off under billing and this distribution tab here, which is new. When you go to it, you'll basically see a list of all the payments in the firm with a bunch of filters as usual over here. And from that you can create a distribution. So a distribution is basically a collection of payments that we want to report on. So if we go here and look at all our payments.
So I want to jump in real quick. There's a pretty common use case of this is looking at your distribution for the month of May. Like say you receive payments in June, but they're actually part of your May distribution, or if that's how the firm operates, this allows you to specifically highlight just May payments. And so you're not accidentally mixing in things that came in later or earlier. That's a pretty common one.
So to set this up, I go in, when you use this first, you won't have any distributions in here. I've set up a bunch here in the past for various demos and things. So I have some for February, March, May 6th. Now I want to create one. I'm in June now, or pretty late in June. I want to create. I want to distribute all the collections we've made here in the last period. So I set my filter to not in distribution. Here's all my payments made. It looks like there's a bunch from 2000. Let's ignore those. Let's just look at the May ones. Okay, so I have a bunch of payments from May. I can then pick all of them, create a distribution. I can call this, maybe I'll call it the June distribution. It's all the May invoices that I'm distributing in June. The naming here is up to your firm. It's in draft mode here. I'm still kind of working with this, but now I have these payments in a kind of bundle. And the way I use that now is that I can go back to the revenue by attorney report and pick this bundle we just created. And now this report here is reporting on all the payments in that distribution bundle. And if a new payment comes in, it doesn't affect this. I'm sure that this is the payments that are being reported on. I can direct my attorneys to validate this and so on, and be sure that it's not in flux. So that's sort of the short version of this. Now there's a little further workflow here that you can do. Each distribution, like the one we just created, has a status that you can update. So you can see here it's in draft. We can change it to distribute, which means I'm ready. It's basically done. It's ready to be distributed. And then I also have distributed here, which means I already paid people what was in this distribution.
Those
so
kind of sound like the steps in the billing workflow. Like you've got your drafts, you're approved or needs to be reviewed, and then submitted to QuickBooks.
Yeah. You can use these for your own purposes. Draft is will not show up for other users in reports, so that's something to be aware of. So you need it to be in to distribute for other users to see it. Also, if I set it to distributed, it locks it so that I can't add any payments or take any payments out of it. So that's just some things to be aware of. We have a fairly comprehensive documentation on this that should pop up the first time you look at this page, and you can go through it. So you should be able to figure this out, maybe with the help of that documentation.
It's also available in the self-help section, or the help center, I believe it's called. If you click that question mark in the top right corner and then click documentation. Doug, our newest member of the engineering team, has done a fantastic job of documenting new features. And so if you ever miss out on that pop-up or want to go back and reference it later, be sure to check here and find those articles.
Right. Some other things here that's sort of at the periphery of this is there is a user permission that plays into distributions. So if you go to settings and user permissions, and then under billing, this manage distributions feature or control has been added, and typically you would only allow maybe your operators or accountants to do this. So I will probably set it up this way here, which only makes that tab available for those individuals in the firm. But then on the reports, when you go to revenue by attorney, other users can access that filter over here and use the feature. It's also available on the My Revenue report, which is a kind of drill into the attorney that's that's logged in to this account right now, and they can use this distribution filter over here and see what they what their share of the month's collections are. So that's our distribution feature. It's still fairly early here. We're actually planning some more some additional capabilities here, specifically the ability to take a distribution, let's say this June one here, and then push it over to QuickBooks, so that it becomes bills for attorneys, so that we can pay them, or journal entries that reflect the individual attorney's share of the income for that month. And we're talking to a few of our clients right now to figure out what would be useful here in terms of syncing this over to QuickBooks and completing the workflow. And if you're interested in this and if you're excited about this or want to help us with this, we'd love to hear from you. So I think that's it in terms of the distribution capability here. And unless there's any questions, we will. I think we have time to go into a little more detail on some of the more advanced report settings for revenue allocation, like we promised earlier.
Yeah, can we actually talk about allocation for fixed fees?
Yeah, let's do that. So we were looking at the revenue by attorney report here. Let me drill into this one invoice again. Sorry, I'm clicking on a whole bunch of things here. So here's our report filtered down to just this one invoice here for $43.70. The invoice had a fixed fee on there. I think it was assigned to Frederick Taylor here. So when we drill in, and if we look at the invoice, we can see this $2,000 fixed fee here. We have quite often firms have the need to split up the fixed fee allocation between different attorneys. So maybe Frederick's name was on this fee, but we really want some other users to be compensated here. And so let me show you how to control that. You go to the fixed fee, so you go into matters, find the matter, A1 fencing here, and you go to the fixed fee tab. In here, you'll find the fixed fee. It's this last $2,000 one, I think. And you can open it up. If it's been billed, you can't click on it because it's not really supposed to be edited, but there's a little shortcut over here to actually open it, or go straight to this thing called revenue allocation. If we open it, you'll see the information here. We can reassign it to another user here, which was to reassign the whole fixed fee in case we made a mistake. Or we can click on revenue allocation, and then I get this detailed control of how I want to split it up. I might say, I think Frank should get some of this, and Chase, I think you need some, and then we can, Courtney, and we typically type in the amount here. There's a quick little shortcut to kind of split it up evenly. And then when we save this and go back to the report, it'll immediately reflect this new allocation. And we'll see these other, Chase responsible. So we'll see Chase appearing suddenly. Anyway, Fred, I think I'm missing a user here. This is weird. But you saw Frederick was supposed to get 2,000. Now he's down to 500. Chase got another 500. and the numbers should be adjusted in correctly. I forgot. I'm somehow surprised by this, but I think I'm just confusing myself. So we should have seen the fixed fee getting split up.
Yep.
So that's a really handy feature, especially for those of you who do contingency cases with very large fixed fees at the end of a case and so on.
Michael, you asked if the responsible attorney and the originating attorney feature work the same way. If you're referring to the filters on the left, like we've been interacting with, yes. That's only going to show matters or situations where myself as the user are listed as the originating or the responsible. But other than that, they work in pretty different ways. They affect origination and reporting in quite different ways.
Sort of an interesting segue to more just talking a few more minutes about some of these options we have in here. You can play around with some of these options in your account. There's no permanent damage from using these and then seeing the effect in the reports and then undoing settings in here. But we currently have, as we saw, the ability to allocate a percentage to originators, to the firm as a whole. We're actually adding the ability to allocate to the responsible attorney. So there'll be one more option in here for that. So we can allocate that in here. That was the segue, I think. But there's other options in here. For example, you might have noticed on the, let me open it in a separate tab here. You might have noticed on the report that there's these unallocated expenses down here. And that's because by default, expenses are not put against the user up here because it's not considered revenue. But we do have the option here, allocate expenses. When that is checked, any expenses assigned to a user will be moved up. Oh, sorry, I refreshed, so I need to, there we go. So now we're seeing the expenses column appear up here, and $100 against Gary, 20 against Mike that were on that invoice, and they're no longer unallocated. So this is useful in some firms to call out explicitly, like I did here.
Yeah.
There's
so
other.
If the firm pays for expenses, then probably won't use this. But if individual attorneys or paralegals or users do pay out of pocket, you want to allocate the expenses. That way they're reimbursed for the expense they incurred.
Yeah. There's a lot of issues in some firms around fixed fees that are unallocated. You can set up a fixed fee and you don't have to assign a name to it. So what do we do in the revenue allocation? Well, we will put it under the unallocated bucket down here. But you can click this setting here, which would allocate anything that's doesn't have a name against it to the responsible attorney. That's helpful for some people. Now, for others, it's been helpful to go to firm info and then say require user on fixed fee to completely get rid of this problem. If you essentially require users on fixed fees, then this is very useful to check so you don't end up with unallocated fixed fees that are stuck in limbo on that report. I want to show one final thing because, and then I'll change gears and talk about other features in LeanLaw. But I want to just bring your attention to one other option that we have in here that you might have noticed when we were showing this origination checkbox. So there's this little box next to the origination checkbox. And you can see here, it's kind of got this little gray tenon here. This is the default origination percentage we set up under the report settings. So whoever, whenever I check this checkbox here, actually, I think so. If I say save changes here, it'll update it afterwards. But so that's the purpose there. Now you can override that. You can say, okay, actually, in this particular case, Heather is the originator, but I'm going to have, she's going to actually give 2% of her fee to Donna for some reason. Many firms have little kind of deals regarding certain clients like this. So if I do this and I save this, I should now see this page with some allocation made to. There's Donna suddenly appearing out of nowhere with a 2% allocation, and so we haven't been able to fully cover all the options we have here. What I would encourage you to do, if this sounds like something you can use in your firm and you're not already using, go through this, and if there's gaps in terms of how your firm does the compensation, we've quite often been able to address that by adding another option or a tweak, so we're very much listening to your needs here in terms of the kind of revenue formulas you use in the firm. There is a final feature here, which is not used by very many, but there is this allocation detail button up here. If you click that, you will get this really nasty big Excel file with a bunch of cryptic detail in that can be used to calculate your own compensation. And I'm happy to help. We are happy to help you interpret that if you need to. But I'm just letting you know there that if you have some really crazy algorithms, there is sort of this escape hatch of doing it all in your own Excel files.
They're not crazy. They're just do-it-yourselfers.
Yeah. Advanced formulas.
That's right, advanced.
All right. Okay, I think so. We have 15 minutes left here.
Yeah.
What shift gear?
What do you got for product updates? What's new this month?
Okay. Let's take a deep breath here and change gears. So I've been talking a lot.
The first thing on the list is pretty drastic. I don't think anybody in here, I mean, I barely know about it, but it's a pretty significant update that we've been working on, or that you and your team have been working on to help us better integrate with other apps.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So we actually launched what's known as an API, a public API to LeanLaw. If you don't know what that is, it probably is not something you need.
Okay, wait.
And that's not to sound patronizing, but if you're curious about this, go to our documentation page, search for API, and we have a great article here that talks about what an API is and what our API can do at the moment and why you would need it. It's essentially to build software that can talk to LeanLaw and sync up things with other systems, like maybe sync up clients and matters with other systems you use. So it's but it does require some technical knowledge to use. So it doesn't just sort of magically connect LeanLaw with other systems. You need to do some work, but it's an essential building block to enable better integrations with other systems.
We're a real software now. We have an API.
Yeah. I know. The other thing I was going to show is, and as Chase said, this should have been obvious to you by now if you use LeanLaw every day. We finally added or enabled this new client matter UI. You'll see a new tab up here called Clients that you didn't have before necessarily. And your Matters tab would now look a little different. And again, you should have had a little, the first time you saw this, which might have been a few days ago, there should have been a little pop-up here that contains some further documentation here.
You're now finally able to get a separate list of your clients and of your matters and interact with them separately.
Yes,
that has been requested.
Yeah,
for a while. I'll say that much. But
that's one of the big things. The other big thing is that when you drill in to either a client or a matter, we now have some overview data here for the clients and for the matter, depending on which one you're looking at. So there's a WIP page here. It's not available to every user. It requires you to have the right permissions set. So don't panic if you think this is suddenly available for all your timekeepers or something. But it's handy to see, WIP for a client that's building up across the matters for that client. An account summary, trust information will be in here if it's relevant, and links to reports down here. And then we have a billing activity tab, which is remarkable. Oh, there it is. Which includes payments, invoices, and you can also include, trust transactions in here. So it essentially gives you kind of like a full transaction history right in here for that firm. So this is really nice, I think.
That's big news. This whole thing, especially the client side of getting a quick overview of your WIP, of trust, of billing activity, all in one place. You don't have to run to different places for different reports. And if you do need those reports, they're all right here anyways.
So play around in there if you haven't already. All your familiar functions should be in there, that if you when you drill into a matter, it looks a little different, but you have the same tabs in here, including that sort of billing activity and overview tab that I showed under the client. But all the usual tabs are in here, so you should be able to.
It looks like Lee's got a question. Can the summary be printed with the client matter on it? The overview page, can this be printed?
We did some work on printing. Now, there's not always a print button available. But if you use your browser function, file print in Chrome or whichever browser you're using here, okay, that didn't print very well.
Like he said, we're working on this.
Okay, I guess we're working on the printing. So some of these print pages print okay, some of them might not be great.
Based on how the page is formatted and set up, but we don't have a print button, so it's not meant to be printed at the moment. But if that's something that's important to your workflow or clients that you have, Lee, let us know, and we'll definitely add that, so we know, hey, Lee needs this.
Yeah,
definitely helps us.
So that's sort of the short version here. We'll be expanding this as we go based on your feedback. So let us know what you think, and if you think something is missing, especially maybe on this page, something you'd like to see surfaced in here, or under the billing activity tab. We're going to be expanding this over time. One request we've had is for you to be able to also do stuff in here, like add a time entry, et cetera, et cetera. That's not there yet, but something we're considering adding here. All right. So time check.
Time check. It looks like we've got about 10 minutes. So should we skip to what's on the horizon?
Well, I got a few other things I want to show here.
Sure.
I think we have time.
Can we do a lightning round? How quick can we get through these?
Yeah, exactly. So we've added a couple of reports here. I think last time we did discuss the WIP bill collected report here. So that's one report we've added. We've added a WIP detail report recently. Sort of an interesting report where we by user, or we show all the WIP detail in a list here and kind of group by user with totals and so on. And you can include time, fixed fees, expenses here. We have, so some features many of our users have been using for a while, but we haven't, we've only now just enabled it for everyone. So one of them is evergreen retainers. Many of you have used this already for a while, but there is a checkbox on the trust account setup that if you enable it, it opens up the option on the, let's see, oh, that was an internal one. It opens up an option on the QuickBooks under a matter to set an evergreen amount. And this in turn opens up some reporting functions and the ability to put evergreen information on invoices. So just kind of, if you were missing evergreen features from LeanLaw, it's now here. Look in our documentation or ask us if you need help using it or setting it up. Let's see.
Got a question. Should we be able to see the new reports page now? I believe that's still toggled.
Yeah, so we're very close to enable this for all of you. I think it's just been enabled for a few accounts. So sorry about it probably is frustrating if I'm showing something here that you don't have in your account. And actually, these new reports, like the WIP reports here, are not available in the old navigation or your current, the navigation you might be seeing. So just be patient for a few more days, I think, and we should be switching this on for your account, or send us a message and we can do it right away. Okay, so few more minutes left. Let me talk about what's next. It sort of ties into one thing we're working on is a better rate system. We have currently the ability to set these named rates for users, and we're working on making this better for especially larger firms where these named rates can be managed across users and for certain roles and so on, so that you can have a travel rate that applies to all users, and you can set a matter to the travel rate. That kind of doesn't make sense, but, let's say a premium rate, you set the matter as a whole to the premium rate, and it adjusts in all the rates for that matter. So if you have like 30 users in your firm, you won't have to set them all individually every time. So
yeah, especially
that's just an example of what we are looking to do with rates.
With our larger firms, that was some feedback we got where operators and secretaries were spending significant amounts of time adding rates for new users or new staff, updating rates for staff. Say you change the billing agreement with a matter and you need to go through and change it for all of them. I mean, that's pretty time intensive. So we're super thrilled to see some energy here on, role management. I think is a pretty good way to encompass that.
Yeah.
So
that's you expect that in the next few months, or I was going to say month, but then I said a few months just to hedge my bets here. And also, if this is something you're excited about, like, holy what, this is important for my firm, I'd love for you to reach out to us so that we can work we rely on working with you guys to make features work in beta and sort of evolve them. So if you're interested in helping us with this rates feature, I'm really interested in talking to you. So text us or use our, just chat us down here, and I'll get in touch.
So
I think we're pretty much out of time. Chase, what are we doing next month?
we're actually off next month. Someone decided to take a vacation, and we decided it was a pretty good idea to give a bit of a rest to everyone who helps make this specific webinar possible. So we'll actually be back in August, and we will be talking about managing users. So things like adding users, removing users, roles, rates for those roles, changing emails, the origination. So for more of the firm operators or secretaries out there, looking at that whole workflow of managing your staff in LeanLaw.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, Chase.
Thank you, Fred.
And thanks everyone for joining. We appreciate it. And let us know, as always, if you have questions or comments. We're here to listen and to help.
We'll see you back here in August.
All right.